Welcome to the Lubbock or Leave It podcast, a recruiting podcast on RedRiverSports.com, brought to you always by our title sponsor for all things recruiting, Carnley Properties. Anyone that's familiar with Red River Sports, familiar with our friend Clayton Carnley, but his mom and their team run Carnley Properties out of the greater Austin metro area. All of your real estate needs, making that big decision in your life, you need somebody with all the smarts and background and experience, that their team has. So please give them a holler. We will include more information on Carnley Properties, Clayton's contact info. Please reach out to them if you're in that Austin metro area and have any real estate needs. Big thanks to Clayton and his team for sponsoring the pod. Ben, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Can't complain.
Dude, Suns in 4. I didn't see you beat up anybody when you were in Denver. So, you could be like an internet legend. I feel like you missed it.
Yeah, I'm a lover, not a fighter, but I was glad
Ooh.
to see the Suns in 4. But then today was a crazy day with all the news. But this is not a NBA podcast, even though
No.
I'm wearing my Dirk shirt today. So shout out Dirk.
My Mavs shirt on. So
I respect the legend, Big German. So, but yeah, man, a lot of recruiting happenings on campus as we speak.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I figure, before we get to who's on campus right now, we'll maybe recap the weekend. Interestingly enough, we always talk about how much recruiting has changed. You and I were texting each other. It feels like you and I would get a hold of these kids on their way to the airport, at the airport, mid-stop, whatever. Now it's proven to be a little more difficult, after the official visits, but also because some of these young men are taking official visit over the weekend, and then like some of the young men we'll talk to, maybe they get a little bit of a break on a Sunday or Monday, and then they're off to another official visit. So that's sort of been the main delay with some of these. We've talked to 3 out of 4, and we'll have the other 2 posted. But I guess let's start with defensive back Terrian Williams out of the state of Georgia. You talked to him, so go ahead and cover Terrian, and then we'll hit the rest.
Yeah, out of all the, not one of the higher rated according to Rivals ranking. I think he's a 5.6, but over 40 offers. So definitely one of the most highly recruited prospects that are visiting. And I think he has a very good relationship with Derrick Jones. He mentioned, they go back to like 8th or 9th grade, back when, Coach Jones was at Duke and in that region of the country. I believe they met each other at a camp or something like that. But yeah, Terrian had great things to say. I think he enjoyed Lubbock. It kind of surprised him. He expected it to be a smaller town than it was. And he mentioned he wants to make a return visit. So that's, I always ask the recruits, hey, you visited, do you plan to come back? And he said, yes, he definitely, he sounded pretty excited about it. So good to hear there. And then he's off to Stanford this week. So Stanford, probably one of the top, recruiting schools, out there. Seems like every year they, grab 5 guys out of, Tech's target list. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, good things to say from Mr. Williams.
Yeah, I hear they have a pretty good college out there at Stanford. I don't know. No, I think we'll keep beating this horse, but getting these kids on campus, a defensive back out of Georgia with 31 listed offers, and yes, the relationship back to 8th or 9th grade, that's great. But these are official visits, and it's not an unofficial, it's not a camp, it's not anything like that. And so to have 31 offers means you have some serious talent. To take an official visit at this point to Stanford means you're a smart kid. And I know that Coach Jones, he has his personality and his passions and his values that he puts out there. And I think it does resonate with some young men. And he does have pretty high standards for his defensive backs. So I know I didn't talk to Terry myself, but I know in talking to some of the recruits, I specifically asked them that. I say, hey, we're still getting to know this guy. He's been on campus for a year, but he's very outgoing. He's very kind of in your face and outspoken on social media. What do you think about that? And they all seem to really like the guy. So yeah, I don't know. Hats off to him for getting these guys on campus. And if he's gonna take a return trip, then that seems positive to me. Now, the other defensive back in town, Jeremiah Cooper, I don't know his high school off the top of my head, but out of the El Paso area, he was taking an official to Texas Tech after taking his first official visit to Iowa State last weekend. And I believe you had mentioned at least one, if not two more Big 12 programs that he intends on visiting as well.
Yeah, he's at SMU right now as we speak, and then he has Baylor and Kansas State, and those are his 5 officials. So yeah, we haven't had a chance to speak with him because right as he left Tech, he gets home to El Paso and then goes to SMU right away. So he's one of those guys you mentioned, not a day off. We'll catch up with him once he gets some downtime. But yeah, just another Big 12 priority. We saw him at Rivals Camp, and yeah, I mean we'll see. What he thought of the visit once we have a chance to catch up with him.
Everything I've read or seen about him, states that he's a safety. But I guess seeing him in person, it looks like he could probably do a little bit of both if needed to be. But really, as we list off all those schools and kind of that plan, that's what's so interesting to me is a lot of these kids are going to get to condense really their entire, not entire recruitment, but the important parts of their recruitment into a 2 to 3 week span. By taking all of these visits and it sounds fun. But I guess what I wonder is, you're probably making a decision after that, right? You're not taking 4 to 5 visits in the span of 2 to 3 weeks and then just waiting till December to commit. And so I'll be interested to see what he says about his timeline. And I'll really just be interested to see how many kids like, Jeremiah, take that many visits and then feel comfortable enough to say, hey, I'm committed and, now I'm focused on that. So anyway, that covers the 2 defensive backs. I'll give you a break and talk about the next guy, Coppell, offensive tackle, Alvin Ibosele. Really enjoyed talking to Alvin, nice young man. He came into town with mom and his older brother. He said that they had great things to say about it. He's another guy that had visited TCU the week before. And I'm just going off the top of my head here because I'm not looking at the report, but I believe Baylor and
Oklahoma
State are his next visits. So again, I've really preached this a lot over the years. Again, we're talking about kids like, with Cooper, you're battling Iowa State, Baylor, and K-State. With Alvin, you're battling Oklahoma State, Baylor, TCU. Like those are the battles you have to be in, right? And B, you got to win your fair share of them because those are the schools you're competing for that, middle of the pack, if you will, puncher's chance to contend, in the conference. And it can be the difference, can literally be on the recruiting trail. So I didn't get a read from Alvin on kind of where things stand. I do know a few of those programs had been recruiting him a little longer than Tech. So we'll see how that shakes out in the long run. But a big thing I always ask kids, and maybe you can speak to this, is I ask them, what was your perception of Lubbock before, you visited for the first time, not only Lubbock, but also Texas Tech. And, 9 times out of 10, they'll say, I really thought it was the country. But when I got out there, it felt more like my neighborhood. It felt more like a bigger city. And, I had always just assumed and/or been told that it was out in the country. And while it may be out, on its own, as we all know, I think a lot of these kids actually getting to be there and actually getting to look into not only the academics, but, a deeper dive into the football program. And maybe it's a Captain Obvious statement, but, especially these kids coming after this pandemic dead period year, they're getting to a lot of these misconceptions or perceptions that are out there in the recruiting world. Once you shatter those, I think that's pretty huge for the Tech coaches, because then they can find these kids that really do like Texas Tech and maybe lean on them a little bit to see if they can get a commitment from them. So I know that was my big takeaway from talking to him. But again, you got to put on the gloves and you got to fight against the Baylors, the TCUs, and the Oklahoma State, for a kid like this. But to me, he seems like a puppy and definitely somebody very much in that Jack Tucker, Jacoby Jackson realm of having a bunch of respectable offers, but maybe not being that big dog in the state just yet because he's a puppy. I don't think he's even really grown into that frame just yet.
Yeah, I agree. And I get the same responses whenever I ask recruits what they thought about Lubbock. They're always, surprised in a positive way. But, this next young man I'm going to talk about, Kaden Weatherby, and just overall, if you look at the official visit list from this month, just offensive line kind of stands out to you,
Hmm. Hmm.
including the two kids from Duncanville who are on campus right now. Um, with Alvin, Caden, Austin Kowecki was an unofficial, but he's a top target. And then Sheridan Wilson, who's supposed to come in at the end of the month. I just think that's just a good group of 6 right there. And they're not going to get all of them, but if they can get a couple, I think that would be a very good start there. But Caden
I think it's.
Weatherby, yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I think you saying that out loud. It was something that Aaron had asked me about yesterday on their show. Um, I think it's kind of indicative of having that many offensive linemen, and you're not going to have like the past 2 years. These coaches have been on campus. They've taken 2 high school linemen. I think these numbers clearly show that they're looking to take anywhere from 3 or 4 at least. This time around. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. And just looking at kind of the lineup right now, they have Josh Berger and TJ Storman are the 2 seniors, but then I guess you have Dawson Deaton too, who's a junior, but then you have
Hmm.
two younger guys there, and you have up and comers like Landon Peterson, and then the Larry Moore from last year, Jack Tucker, Jacoby Jackson. So you have some young guys who you want to develop, and just adding to those numbers, I think would be a good thing. As far as I just talked to Kaden Weatherby about an hour ago, and he had great things to say. So much so that I went ahead and put in a future cast for the Red Raiders. That's not to say he didn't tell me he's committed. That's not to say, hey, I'm going to Tech, but he's down to Texas Tech and Kansas State. So another one of the Big 12 battles you mentioned, and he just great things to say about Coach Farmer, Coach Wells, his time at Texas Tech, and just the opportunity to play early. He told me he's visiting Kansas State this weekend and to expect a decision sometime next week. So, we've been asked a lot, Matt, who's going to be the first commitment? Well, we don't know, but that's one of the first ones who's given us kind of a time frame coming up. So
Hmm.
it sounds like Tech has at least a 50-50 shot there with Kansas State being the main competition.
Yeah, no, I mean, and he had told me the same thing ever since we first talked and I learned about the visit. So I know he's been focused on those 2 programs for a while. I noticed that our Michigan site wrote about him, and again, I don't have his profile in front of me, but again, very respectable offer list, a little bit of different recruiting grounds, if you will, from Colorado. But at the end of the day, right, blocking's blocking, and if he can do it very well, doesn't matter if he's from Dallas, Houston, or Colorado. I think that what we said maybe 2 weeks ago, kind of talking about these timelines and who will be the first commitment. Um, you know, what I thought is kind of like flipping it on its head that kids would take all their visits and wait and then maybe sit on it because I guess the last thing you want are these insta commits where then 2 months later they're like, oh man, like I canceled all my other visits, or I'm having to take visits on the low, and am I really committed, type of stuff. I really think you're going to see kids that take 2 to 3 officials, like a Bryson Donnell or even like a Kaden Weatherby, and say, okay, well these are the schools that are prioritizing me. These are the schools that I'm going to go visit. And hey, I really like this school, and I'm going to make that commitment. I mean, it's recruiting. Kids can change their mind at any moment in time. But I do think that third, next week is the third week of June, but that third or fourth week of June is just going to be huge because for a program that has 0 commitments, I think you're going to start to see some action. And I guess that kind of transitions pretty nice into the fact that this is our first midweek official visit to cover. And I say that because they start Tuesday and it's Wednesday night. So I guess that means they're done tomorrow. If you think of like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's what I'm assuming. But speaking of guys that are high on Tech and that could be on commit watch, let's start with Gunter athlete
Hut
Hut
Graham.
Graham,
Yeah.
because this is a kid that, as of last week, didn't have an offer, came in camp with the Red Raiders, showed them what he could do, and got an offer that day. Scheduled this official visit for like less than a week later. So I think things are happening pretty quickly. I know he camped with TCU. I'm not up latest and greatest, but I think you would have already texted me if there were other offers or something. So, I mean, I think it's trending in the right way. And I don't know much else besides that, we watched him at the old ballpark just whoop up on Baron Morton's team for a variety of reasons. But what I told the guys is, the athleticism, the twitch, that was all there. I mean, he was the straw that stirred the drink for that team for certain.
Yeah, he had 7 touchdowns in that game. I looked it up, and he plays quarterback for his team, but being recruited as a safety by Texas Tech, and he's on campus right now. Like you mentioned, he came in Tuesday, leaves tomorrow, so we're not allowed to talk with them until they get off campus, and so we'll have an update with Hut, probably tomorrow or Friday, if possible. But yeah, just Tech is his first Power 5 offer. It's in the state of Texas. So, he just seemed pretty excited about that opportunity. And his dad is a football coach. He used to coach
Mhm.
with Keith Patterson at Arizona State. So,
Oh, okay.
just a lot of relationships there. And yeah, I mean, Hut sounded pretty excited about the offer when I spoke with him last week. And we'll see. He could be one of those guys who, makes a decision here pretty soon.
I called it confidence when I talked to the guys. But I mean, you were there at the game with me. What I like is I love confidence can be mistaken by some, as cockiness, but not only was he a leader and like probably the best player on his team, but like I love guys that like talk shit in a good way, that they're just hyped. And, anytime there's a state game, I mean, especially hell, we went to Duncanville, DeSoto. There's a lot of talking going on, right? But, when they went up like 30 points, I mean, it was score after score and the talking stopped, but he kept going. And like, I like that personally. And I just think that shows a lot of fieriness. And when you think of like that leadership role he has, and then maybe transitioning that to safety, I mean, the safety is arguably the quarterback of the defense, if not the middle linebacker. So you just like to see that, right? I mean, there's been some successful guys come through with his makeup, at Texas Tech, and for him to come and earn that offer at camp, it's very reminiscent of guys like Jack Tucker, like Philip Beatty, that may not have this blockbuster recruitment at the time, but they get that offer on campus, they build that rapport with the coaches, and whether it's right away or it takes a little bit, they commit, and they're a Red Raider. So I mean, again, if we're talking future cast, I don't do that as much as you do, but I would definitely put one in for Huck Graham, if I did that, and maybe you have already.
I'm not sure if I have, maybe, but yeah, just I mentioned he plays quarterback for his team, but he's very athletic. 6'1", 185, claims a 4.48 40-yard dash, and had a 35-inch vertical at the Elite 11. So definitely a top tier athlete. So he can make that move to safety as the coaches see him.
Yeah, I don't know his full name, but Hut. I mean, he's like born to play football,
I,
right?
th-
So
I think it's Hudson, but we'll go with Hut. That's what
okay,
it's his
all
Twitter
right.
name, so we're going with it. You want to talk about the Duncanville kids?
No, you do it, man. You had the scoop first. You give it to us.
Yeah, so last week, as we reported and posted, Jalen Early came out with a top 6, and it was kind of a surprise to see the Red Raiders on there because this is a Rivals 250 kid. We weren't sure how much the coaches were involved there, but top 6, and then we found out he's visiting, which was huge news. And then come to find out he was going to bring 2 of his teammates, Cameron Williams and Jordan Crook, who's Cameron Williams is a 6'6", 370-pound offensive guard, and Jordan Crook's a linebacker committed to Oklahoma State. So they're gonna, they're all on campus right now. All 3 Duncanville kids, highly rated, highly recruited, and again, they're still on campus, so we haven't had a chance to talk with them, but we will as soon as we can. Just getting these guys on campus is a huge win. You don't know if you can. These guys all have offers from Texas and Oklahoma's and all these LSU's and all these different other programs. So you don't know if you'll ultimately get them, but again, you got to give yourself a chance. And so here are the coaches giving them a chance, and hopefully, they can impress, these couple days.
It's all you can ask. It's all about getting kids on campus. Doesn't matter if they're Rivals 250 or just some other kid that you just really, really want. And I think it says a lot when these kids only have X amount of visits and they could go wherever they want to. but they're coming to Texas Tech during the week, with their parents. And so you and I, just kind of going back to it, you and I did go to Duncanville and versus DeSoto. We were there to see Jerron Bradley. We were there just to kind of see a great game in general. I remember it was freezing cold, but what I also remember is thinking, man, again, I've said this a numerous amounts of time. It is not, me and Ben are not like talent evaluators. We don't think of ourselves like that. We could take any one of you watching this to that game and you'd say, good God, that's a huge kid, right? But they just stood out. Both of them played left tackle, right tackle. They actually, in talking with both of them after the offers, they actually switch it up depending on the opponent or depending on the defense. And so that's kind of cool to me from an evaluation standpoint, because it's not easy to switch from left tackle to right tackle. Your body, your motions, they're all different. And maybe that's obvious, but I've heard that from so many kids that you can't just make that transition, at the flip of a switch. But I guess what I would say is, all that to say, watching that game, I absolutely fell for Jordan Crook. I mean, did I say that right? Sorry. Is it Jordan? Yeah, sorry. Crook is a baby Jordan Brooks. I mean, when I talk to the guys, all three of these guys are ready to come in. And I feel like if they don't start, they're ready to contribute right away. They have college bodies. They are in a program where, undefeated or success is the expectation. I'm not saying it's run like a college program, but it is a big boy program with a big boy coach and coaching staff. And I don't know, guys. I mean, Jordan Crook, I know that helps having the stud defensive end right in front of him, but he was knocking heads off in that game. DeSoto could do nothing. DeSoto's not a nobody program either. We came there hoping to see Jerron, blow it up. They've got talent all over that offense, maybe not as much on the offensive line, but they did nothing. And Jordan Crook was a huge part of that night. So color me a big, big fan. And I thought things were kind of over when he had committed, because you look at his offer list too. I mean, that's a huge get for Oklahoma State. This is a kid that could kind of go wherever he wanted. And so I think to have him on campus is pretty cool. He didn't tweet, he didn't Instagram, he didn't do any of that for obvious reasons. But kids don't visit just to take a visit to Lubbock, right? They have to be interested. Last thing I'll say, before I hand it back to you is it's important that we talk about the new coaches that are on the recruiting staff, and specifically Eron Hodges. These kids aren't visiting campus without Eron Hodges. Like, it's not happening. Like, I'll just flat out say that. And when I talked to Jalen early, I asked him straight up, I'm like, well, dude, you've got like 35, 40 offers. Like, Texas Tech just offered you, and they're like offer number 41. Like, tell me, who have you talked to? How did this come together? Man, Eron Hodges reached out to me, told me he's at Tech now. I loved him when he was at Purdue, blah, blah, blah. And look at what's happened from 41st offer to not even in that top 10 to being in the top 6 with, like, I don't know, but like Florida State, Ohio State, Penn State, several others that are, and again, it's the old school. Now I'm going to forget it, but one of these things is not like the other. One of these things is just not the same. I mean, that's probably what the perception of people that don't follow Texas Tech or care about Texas Tech are probably thinking. But I don't know. I think it's always very telling, like, what these kids do on social media. And I mean, they're posting about it on their story. They're posting about it on Instagram. They're getting hundreds of comments, and you're seeing Baron Morton comment, Donovan Smith comment, Tyler Shuck comment. To be in that fight and to feel like you have a chance like that, it's pretty huge for a kid that's just coming off a visit to Columbus, Ohio, and Ohio State.
Yeah, and to that point, I saw, Taj Brooks comment on both of the offensive linemen, and here I am just thinking, he wants to run for 2,000 yards next year is what he's trying to do. But yeah, I mean, Cameron Williams is the same deal. He posted the top 11, Tech offered after, and then they are getting an official visit. So, so Cameron Williams is one of the guys I've seen in person. I saw him at the DFW King of the Trenches camp where he won MVP. I posted on my personal Twitter a bunch of videos and pictures from that event, and he's just a mammoth, you mentioned college size. I'll even go next level. He's an NFL sized offensive lineman. Like that guy, he's just massive. But
He's
yeah,
huge. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, just and with these three, like I said, you don't know, but maybe if you get one, maybe they bring over their teammate. Both of them. Who knows? All you can do is give yourself a shot. You want to cover this coming weekend?
Yeah, let's go for it. I mean, the last thing I'll say is um, to have those guys on campus, it's not like a pat on the head or a participation trophy either. I mean, I think that's serious because you look at offer lists, you see how things shake out. Um, when I mention Eron Hodges, like he's very kind of loud and not afraid to share his opinion, and he's flat out like on Instagram himself saying, "Hey, the NFL is going to find you. You come to Texas Tech. I'm going to pick up these guys from the airport. This is big time." And literally filming himself driving to the airport. And I think I'm not going to say this verbatim, I guess, but what I took away from it is he was like, "Y'all can come out here, y'all can be 3-year starters, or you could be off to the league. You guys can start right away." And I'm thinking like, this is wild. Like Tech's never had somebody in recruiting that's pushed those boundaries and that's like been out in front of your face, and people can think whatever the hell they want to. This shit works. I mean, period. This is what I mean. He learned this at Ohio State, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's carried him on to jobs at Purdue and now Texas Tech. Like the guy knows what he's doing.
And he joined the board last week. He posted some of those same thoughts about how he's not gonna, back down from any recruiting battle, and he's gonna go after the best of the best. But moving ahead to this weekend, the first visitor I wanted to preview, Derrick Brown. He's a linebacker from East Texas, who he was just on campus a couple of weeks ago for an unofficial. The very first day recruiting opened up, he was on campus, I believe, helping his brother move in, but he's also visited Texas and Oklahoma, and he also has a visit to Baylor, I believe, the following week. But he is set to be in Lubbock this Friday for his official visit. And what do you think about Mr. Brown, who we saw at Under Armour All-American Camp?
I mean, I think we both agree we know where he's going to school, and that it's not Texas Tech. But I think in the same vein of being in the fight, here's the thing. Derrick Brown, I would argue, is not the number one recruit on OU or Texas's board, right?
Agree.
They're going to go out, and here's the reality of the food chain. They can go out, they can give him this offer, they can tell him to wait. We'll talk about another kid in a minute, and we'll talk about Texas tactics there, which are laughable. But they can go do all that, right? And they can offer the outside linebackers, the Russians, whoever they want, and tell Derrick to wait because they know he would just jump on it. Because just because a kid goes to social media and says, "I have an offer from Texas," that doesn't mean they can call the coaches and commit tomorrow.
Right.
I think anyone obsessed enough with recruiting to watch this probably knows that. But I guess my point there is I like the fact that they're in the fight, because let's say that starts to come to light after he's been on these campuses, after he's interacted with these coaches, after the coaches can flat out say, "Hey, we're ready to take you right now. There's no stipulations. There's no games. We've waited. We've been patient. Can you say the same about some of these other schools?" And then at that point in time, you have to weigh the allure of the logo and the tradition versus going to really do your own thing and blaze your own trail, right? I'll never say a negative thing about Texas Tech, but there is, those are blue blood programs. They're top programs. When people see those logos, they know, what that is, right? Even on a national basis. So I get that. But like we talked about 2-3 weeks ago, tremendous from him being on an unofficial to like move his brother in for this to turn into an official. I think that's huge, right? I know that he's been unofficial to Oklahoma, official to Texas. I don't know what his other visit plans were off the top of my head. But again, to have him on an official and to, now that he's already been in town and slightly familiar with things already, but then to spend all that time around the coaches and let them lay it on. We'll see. I think these coaches in particular, with his frame and his body type, I really think they could develop him into a monster. I think they had to do that with kids at Utah State that were maybe a little under recruited, or maybe they hadn't filled out that frame. But I mean, this kid is 6'5", like 200, 210 pounds. Like there's no way he's going to play at that height and weight, right? He'll probably grow another couple inches. He'll probably put on at least 30, 40 pounds. For all we know, he's like still 17 years old. So love the player. But right now, I mean, you and I follow these kids on social media. It's everything Texas for him right
Texas.
now. So
yeah,
we'll see what changes. But that's my 2 cents on Derrick Brown.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to get him and Curly Thomas both off the edge together. That's what I'm trying to do.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
When I'm building a defense. I'm not sure how much longer we have on the Zoom. But let's talk about these last 3 visitors for this weekend real quick. We have Jared Beatty. He's a linebacker out of Illinois. Not an area Tech usually recruits, but they made, one of his top 4, I believe. He's taken 4 officials to Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan State, and then the Red Raiders. And that's a Kevin Cosgrove relationship up in that area of the country. Jared Beatty, you spoke to him a while ago when he got his offer. But 5.6, 3-star recruit, the number 50 rated outside linebacker in the country per Rivals.
Yeah, I mean, 6'4", 200 pounds. I mean, just pretty big already. And again, when we talk about the Big 10 competition, I mean, I view the Big 10. Everybody knows the SEC and certain programs that produce, but I view the Big 10 as producing very, very solid linebacker talent. Especially at some of these schools that we're talking about, maybe Sands, Illinois, for all I know. But for him to have that relationship and think enough of it to use one of those official visits, I think when we go back to that perception versus reality thing, here's a kid from Metro Chicago area coming to visit West Texas. I mean, what's he got to be thinking? He doesn't know anything. He probably thinks cowboy hats and boots and riding horses and stuff. You know what I mean? So I think this is their shot to really make a good impression. And, really a lot of these linebackers, it's not lost on them that there's been success at the linebacker position at Texas Tech. And the coaches use that, and the coaches talk about that and that development and what it means to them. And I think even Wells shared some of that when we were talking about the strength and conditioning program, when he and I talked a few months back. So I know they're going to lay that on thick. I liked the kid when I talked to him. Again, they played in the spring, so I'd be lying if I said I reviewed his spring tape. I need to take a look at that. But, we'll talk to him after the visit. I'll be probably most interested to get his thoughts on, just West Texas and spending time around the coaches.
Yeah, no doubt. And then the final 2 official visitors are 2 kind of interesting stories to me. We have the DB from Cedar Hill, Jalen Peoples, who was going to visit and then was not going to visit and then was going to commit to Kansas and then is not going to commit to Kansas. And now he's visiting again. So just a whole lot of movement happening there with Peoples. And he says he's going to visit now. Now he's a high 3-star, but you always talk about recruiting Cedar Hill and these schools. So
I mean, I like the player. I definitely do. As of 4 or 5 months ago, though, you and I both checking in with him. He wasn't talking to Tech. And then you look at I think the offer list does show off the top of my head, at least 25 to 30 offers. 30. So interesting how it ended up boiling down to Tech and Kansas, with Tech, getting this sort of visit out of the blue, right? Iowa was in the mix, no longer taking a visit there. I get that Emmett Jones is a really good recruiter. I get that he's from Dallas and he has those connections. But, bro, unless you just really want to get out of the state of Texas, they got a brand new coach. You have no idea what's going to be happening there. And I'm not saying Tech is better off by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm hoping to hear different comments from him and understand some of this a little bit more after the visit. Because, I mean, we're talking about kids that haven't been able to take visits for 14, 15 months. So why take one visit and shut everything down like we talked earlier? But yeah, positive to see him coming in town. Definitely like the player. Charles Esters, they were there last year, signing him. Great program. And again, I mean, I think we have enough ins at Cedar Hill where we can figure some things out. But honestly, I like to just talk to the kids and get their perspective. And at the end of the day, they are kids. So maybe he rushed some of that, or, and Tech has a shot here. But I want to talk about Tyler King, because this is a young man out of A. Leaf Taylor in Houston. I wrote about him before he had an offer, and coaches in touch. And it's one of those kids where when you and I talk to a kid and they have, one or two offers, but they want us to put 18 schools showing interest, we're hesitant of that, right? And we want to ask questions and what coaches, and that's our job, right? I mean, because any kid could say, Ben, update my profile. LSU's talking to me. Well, okay. What does that mean, right? And so we have to ask those questions. And, coming out of this whole pandemic thing, like we've talked about multiple times, it's even harder, right? Because you don't know what that means if a coach is talking to you. Oh, they've invited me to a camp. All right, well, so what? You know what I mean? So he has been tearing it up, I think, on the camp circuit. I saw reports of a 4.38 or something crazy at the A&M football camp. So I expect him to get more offers. But what I wanted to talk about with Tyler King is I haven't written the story because I didn't know how to write it, and I thought it would be better to wait until after the official visit, because halfway through our conversation he hadn't even told me about the official visit, and I thought that would have been an automatic. He kind of ducked it, and he said, well, he had just camped with Texas, and he's like, well, I'm really focused on the Longhorns right now, and the coaches told me to wait. They want me to wait 30 days because they need to evaluate the tape. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that, right? Our job is supposed to ask questions, right? Open-ended questions. And he's like, well, they had a lot of different camera angles at the camp, and they want to review all the tape from the camp. And I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, like I've heard a lot of things, like a lot, right? Here we're talking about Hut Graham, for example. What if Matt Wells said, Hut, we really like you, man, but we had like 7 different camera angles today, and we want to review all of them. Give us about 30 days, and we'll let you know if we offer or not. I mean, that's the biggest bunch of horse shit I've ever heard. You know what I mean? But that's what I was talking about earlier. They can do stuff like that because, oh, it's Texas and I'll wait and whatever. He didn't camp with Tech and got the offer anyway because he went to these other places. Again, love the kid, love the player, electric, think speedy slot type. And, even the kid that had decommitted from TCU, they're really not talking to him because they had already moved on and they were already evaluating Tyler. So I really like to see the offer. I like the fact that he's coming into town. But, man, I would be really leery of getting a verbal from a kid like that, because what if one of those schools miss out on a target? He's gone. Like, he practically said he would commit to Texas if they offered, right? And so I know those things change. I know these are young men. Maybe I've said that a couple of times, but to me, I thought this was a better forum than for me to write about that on the board or talk about some of that. But I don't know. I those things, I've covered recruiting long enough, and I just always advocate for the kid. These kids have been through enough. Don't yank them around on the recruiting trail with offers that may or may not be existent, right? I mean, I don't think that's cool, right? If a kid needs to qualify or get better grades or get a test score, sure, give him a deadline to do so. But if his grades are fine and other schools are offering him, I just think that's shady.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned he didn't camp, because I think he was supposed to, and then probably got caught up with the A&M and the UTs and I get it. So Hut Graham, we just spoke about him. He just tweeted, big announcement tomorrow, stay tuned, with the little side-eye emoji. So what does that mean?
You better stay tuned.
I'm tuned.
Maybe he saved 5% with Geico, or 15%. What is it? Yeah, on his car insurance.
15.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's in Lubbock right now. At least we believe he came in yesterday, and a regular official visit's 48 hours. So
put him on notifications right now. We'll do it.
I've had him on notifications. That's why I see this tweet pop up.
He doesn't even follow me back, man. I'm not verified like you, Ben. I'm such a has-been in the game,
So Matt, ask me who the first commit's going to be of the 2022 class.
Hey, Ben, who's the first 2022 commitment going to be?
I'm going to go with Hut Graham. Just a guess.
Okay. Well, I'm going to look at where Gunter, Texas is.
It's like 20 miles north. And I listened to your interview with Level and Dickens, and you called it West Texas, and and I just kind of face palmed, but that's okay.
No, I do that. That's why I like this and not the radio, because on the radio, I feel like I need to say something. And truth be told, I'm in Houston visiting some clients. I was in, one of my clients has like 3 huge warehouses, right? And we do all like the IT and the wireless, and then they have scan guns and all. We do all these integrations. So every time we visit, we get on these golf carts and go around. And I scheduled it for 3:30. I thought, no way we'll be there an hour. And so I told Aaron and them to call me at 4:30. Man, I look down at my phone, it's like 4:25, and we're just getting on the golf cart to go back to the main building. And I said, guys, I hate to do this, but I'm going to take a phone call at 4:30. I was talking to them, walking through a warehouse, trying not to be too loud, but also not like whispering on the radio. So yeah, no, I listened back to some of that, and I think I even said that there was an offensive prospect in town. No, there wasn't. Outside the offensive lineman, I totally forgot about Jeremiah Cooper's name, so I just spaced on that. But yeah, I don't know where Gunter is, but now I do. So there you have it. But
live radio is not for me. That's why I let you handle all those interviews, and I just kind of stay in the background.
I'll get it right one of these days. But yeah, no, man, I mean, I think we've come a long way from the first episode of Lubbock or Leave It. And not just, the fact that you and I are crushing it. That's not what I mean. But I mean, the stuff, just the content we're able to talk about, the fact that we may be looking at a potential first commitment in the class. I think historically, in my years of doing this, you see that really gain momentum, right? And so we'll see what happens. I mean, I think you and I talked about the 3 guys that we feel good about. But again, we're going to talk to the other Duncanville guys as well. Then you're going to have all these other guys come into town. And then the week after that, you're going to have more. And it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, at this point last week when we recorded, we didn't know about the Duncanville guys. So what do we not know about for midweek next week? We'll see, right?
Yeah, a lot of exciting possibilities. And then, a big, weekend visit next weekend too, with 6 guys that we will talk about next week.
All right, man. Well, guys, again, we'll put the information for Carnley Properties. Please give them a holler for any real estate needs in the Austin metro area. Thanks to Clayton and his team for sponsoring the podcast. But again, this has been the Lubbock or Leave It podcast. For Ben Golan, I'm Matt Clare. We appreciate it, guys.